Chapter 66. Initially, Lu Shu was troubled as to why he was considered to have Tier F aptitude. But it was all working out for him now, as it provided him with an umbrella to shield himself from the suspicions. Having Tier F aptitude was the most common amongst the metahumans, just as Shifei had mentioned. That meant that the majority of them would require half a month of training in order to complete one cycle and 4 entire months to complete the mysterious matter cycle training regime. That was considered to be the normal speed, while those who had Tiers B or A aptitude belonged to the category of gifted geniuses. If those with Tier B aptitude were regarded as geniuses, that would mean that those with Tier A aptitude were to be regarded as extremely gifted geniuses. Lu Shu was not very sure what exactly was his actual aptitude. He had planned to earn some money over the next 2 days in order to purchase 2 small bottles of sodium-potassium alloy over the net, to conduct his own experiment. He would then be able to figure out his and Lu Xiaoyu's actual aptitude. The sodium-potassium alloy was packaged in a tiny bottle, barely the length of a finger, priced at $149. The bottle was tightly sealed and it contained inert gases as well as a little bit of the alloy inside. As for its price, it was considered as somewhat reasonable. It was not possible to get your hands on such items originally, but after the incident where confidential information from the Daoyuan class had been leaked out, everyone knew that the sodium-potassium alloy could be used to find out what one's aptitude really was. Thus, someone had hatched a business plan based on this idea. Countless parents had gone out to purchase this so that they could find out what their child's basic aptitude was. Those unscrupulous businessmen were rather crafty, as the bottle contained a pathetic amount of barely a few milligrams of the alloy, and it would not pose as a threat even if an ordinary person's blood were to be mixed with it. In this era of metahumans, there was already someone who had started to make a living by relying on the metahumans. It was as if these opportunities were like rain falling from the sky, descending onto the earth and integrating itself into the people's peaceful lives. It can't be denied that this world was motivated by benefits, where everyone would be headed towards these opportunities. Wherever money was to be made, there was bound to be people around. Lu Shu tossed and turned in his bed the entire night thinking about his situation. Practicing the Daoyuan class training method was simple, as all he had to do was to follow the procedures while the magical energy from the earth and the sky would swiftly enter his body. However, without any exception, the galactic map within him would suppress this energy and expel it out of his body. The next morning, Lu Shu's stinky tofu were sold out in just 5 minutes. He had only collected roughly about 1,000 distress points throughout the entire duration. Well, that was awkward. In the morning, while he was carrying his box of stinky tofu over, there was already a queue waiting in line for him to start his business. To be honest, Lu Shu did not feel a thing, as he did not really like to eat stinky tofu, but the authentic taste of it was undoubtedly welcomed by those who loved them. There was a business trend which was starting countrywide, where owners would hire a group of people to line up outside of their store in order to look as though their food was especially delectable. Upon seeing this, others would think, "Damn it, it must be delicious, that's why there's a queue," while they end up joining the line. This was exactly the case which Lu Shu was faced with. There were people who were queuing up for his food, which invited more to the queue. Lu Shu stared into his empty box. Money was rolling fast, but what about the distress points? This must not carry on. He needed to think of a solution. But before he finds a solution to his problem, he would have to rely on his adorable group of classmates. Today's sales ended exceptionally early today, and as he entered the classroom, he saw that there was a group of people who were rowdily gathering around, doing who knows what. Lu Shu was excited whenever he saw crowded places nowadays, and quickly made his way over to find out what was happening. Pushing through the crowd, Lu Shu saw that Lu Li was competing in a game of arm wrestling against this chubby boy from the class. Boys had always loved to play games such as arm wrestling and competing to find out who could touch the backboard of the basketball hoop. This chubby boy was the longtime champion in arm wrestling ever since a long time ago, and no one could even come close to his strength. But today, Lu Li challenged him with a face full of excitement. As both of them shouted the word of start, The chubby boy lost in one thud as the back of his hand turned red from being slammed into the table. With shock all over their face, "Class monitor, what happened to you? Could you have possibly awakened? Are you a strength type?" Luli smiled with an air of coolness. "Nope, I didn't awaken. But as for being strength type, not exactly as well." Of course, Luli could not tell them that it was due to him completing one cycle of the yin-yang kinship of the 3 training method. Since he had already completed the first step in training his body, it wasn't surprising that his strength increased by 100 pounds. Having an additional 100 pounds in his strength felt incredible, and it would no longer be far-fetched to claim that his physical abilities had surpassed those of an ordinary human. The surrounding Daoyuan class students all understood what this meant inside of their heart, but they could not expose Luli's secret, since it was everyone's secret. The confidentiality rule was like a blade, hovering above their head as it watched their every move. Since Shifei had the technique to impart training methods to others, who knew if there was a technique which could rob them of their training method? If they were to be expelled due to leaking out confidential information, it would be too saddening if their training method were to be taken away from them. And up till this point, no one would be impulsive enough to abandon their wonderful future. All of them were awaiting the next training method after the mysterious matter cycle, wondering what magical effect it could bring them. This proved to show that teenagers could indeed keep secrets, and all it depended on was whether the consequences would be dire or not. Right now, the only ones who had B-class aptitude in sophomore class 3 were Luli and Jiang Shui. The rest of them made no substantial progress even though they had started on their training journey. The substantial progress was referring to the actual increase of their physical strength. A group of them excitedly challenged Luli to arm wrestling, not to taste defeat but rather, to find out how it would be like in the future after they had completed their cycles. What Luli had now was what all could achieve in the future. While Luli was wrestling with the chubby boy, he had won without holding back at all. Even till now, that boy was still cradling his hand while his eyebrows were still furrowed. However, Luli was much more polite towards his classmates in the Daoyuan class, even speaking to the point whenever they are talking. Lu Shu was laughing from the sides. This guy was like a typical politician, embracing all that was beneficial to him and throwing aside anything else which he considered to be useless. The fact was that with Luli attaining the increase in his strength of 100 pounds, it was placing pressure on his peers to achieve the same as well. Luli humbly smiled towards his classmates from the Daoyuan class. "If we all work hard together, there would be a day where we could all possess this strength." Winners being winners, he had delivered his victory speech. This was the arrogance of a victor. At this moment, Luli suddenly looked towards Lu Shu who was standing by the sides. With his lips pursed, he smiled and said, "Lu Shu, want to have a go?" "Sure," as Lu Shu happily replied. Upon seeing Lu Shu's smile, Luli felt that something was rather odd, but the invitation was initiated by himself and he was feeling rather confident of his own strength. Thus, there was no need to regret anything. A Tier F opponent such as Lu Shu, he believed that there was no way he could possibly lose to him in arm wrestling. Lu Shu sat across from Luli and placed his arm down, tightly interlocking their hands together. Luli held on to his breath. As someone who had B-class aptitude and was considered to be a young genius, no one dared to say anything bad about him even if they did not like him, except for Lu Shu. Luli had already decided that upon the start of the match, he would ruthlessly destroy Lu Shu without holding back. Start. Thump. This was the familiar sound which was made when someone's hand were to suddenly come into contact with the tabletop, and it was really loud. Everyone surrounding them fell silent and Luli opened up his eyes widely as he started to question the results. From Luli's distress, plus 999. Chapter 67. Everyone thought Luli would win, and most people knew that Luli did not fancy Lu Shu. As for the reason, everyone knew what it was. But at this moment, the usual, overwhelming Luli that everyone had in mind did not happen. In an instant, Lu Shu had fiercely pressed Luli's wrist on the table, Just like how Luli mercilessly defeated the big fat student. Shocked, Luli stared blankly at Lu Shu. This result was something he could not accept. Having increased his strength by 100 pounds, how was it possible that he could not beat a weak and frail-looking Lu Shu? That moment happened so quickly that he could not comprehend it. He felt Lu Shu relax his grip and immediately took the opportunity to use his enhanced strength to overpower him, only to hear a thump again. From Luli's distress, plus 999. Luli was cornered and it turned out that Lu Shu had the last laugh. Lu Shu's grip loosened again but Luli had already given up, disappointing Lu Shu who quickly urged him on, come, my left hand is much stronger than my right, let's change hands. Luli subconsciously extended his right hand. Thump. Luli? Didn't you say your right hand is weaker? From Luli's distress, plus 999. Lu Shu was still not satisfied, but Luli had totally given up on competing. Luli slowly turned his gaze to Lu Shu, when he suddenly noticed Lu Shu's face of disbelief. I just awakened as a strength type. Whoa! He was utterly speechless. If Lu Xiaoyu was present, she would have known that Lu Shu had begun his act. And to Lu Shu, this was the perfect time to reveal that he was a strength type which would earn him distress points while also showing off his strength, to kill two birds with one stone. Furthermore, this stuff wasn't part of the confidentiality and also not part of the contents of the Daoyuan class, so he could speak about it openly. Everyone around was stunned. What? How did he awaken so casually? Was that a joke? Awakening from a simple game of arm wrestling? Lu Shu shook Luli's hand. Thank you so much. You're a really good classmate. If not for arm wrestling with you, I would not have awakened. From Luli's distress, plus 1000. Luli could feel his frustration building up. This scum, did he really awaken from arm wrestling me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong? Karma. How did I let such a person awaken? It must be karma. At that moment, Lu Shu realized something. It seemed like there was a limit of 1000 distress points each person could contribute at a time. After Luli had contributed the 1000 distress points, there was a continuous chain of plus 40 plus 39 plus 36 distress points and Lu Shu momentarily thought that Luli was cute. Where else could he find such an adorable classmate? Not only Luli, even those around who had secretly ridiculed Lu Shu about his tier aptitude all contributed negative emotional values. The morning sale of stinky tofu did not make much distress points, but in the end, all of it was earned back from Luli. Including the meager amounts of distress points from the morning, he had earned a total of 6,000 plus points. Frankly speaking, Luli had been experiencing a sense of superiority since this morning. How many were even tier BS in this school? And how many actually possessed superhuman strength? He was one of them. The feeling was like driving your dad's car downtown while the rest of your classmates did not even have a driving license. Only by comparing people could you see their difference in their worth. But that arm wrestle with Lu Shu had made him feel sick. Lu Shu turned to the surrounding classmates. Come, let's arm wrestle. Upon that, the crowd started generating a bunch of distress points and subsequently disbanded. That was so unsupportive. Lu Shu sighed as he watched his classmates leaving. At that point in time, Lu Shu had begun reflecting on the problems with his act, if he could have earned more distress points by using a different method. After all, reflecting was necessary for improvement. If the cute classmates had known what Lu Shu was researching about, they would probably call the cops. In a flash, Lu Shu had become Luocheng International School's second-ever metahuman. What a name for himself. But everyone was disappointed to find out that Lu Shu was a strength type. What they wanted to see was something different. After the Golden Foundation had posted the details of metahumans, everyone understood that strength-type metahumans started off as Class F after awakening. There were already many metahuman-related discussions on the Golden Foundation forum, and the most popular question was, which type of metahuman was the strongest? It was impossible to reach a conclusion as there could be so many variations. Even the Golden Foundation did not release such information, so there was no way normal people could figure it out. As of now, the only known types were strength, elemental, animal, and plant. Someone said on the forums that with the appearance of Daoyuan class in China, there would be similar programs in other countries. No one knew for sure, but their grading format should be the same as the Golden Foundation's AB-Def format. It seemed that the Golden Foundation never released information they were not confident of, as all of their information was reliable. So why did the majority feel that strength-type metahumans were weak? That was because the Golden Foundation added a Class F specifically for them, while all the other types started as Class E. And this was what made everyone think that strength-type metahumans were the weakest. Some also felt that trained metahumans were the most stable. After all, no one had been able to awaken enough times to reach Class A, and just how many times you had to be shocked to achieve that? But Lu Shu reckoned that training could be hard too. What a joke! Having to put in so much effort every day to earn that distress points only to achieve Class E. The training route may not be as simple as the awakening route. If others knew about his training, they would probably change their mindset about this. Someone within Lu Li's small clique added, "Class rep, you really shouldn't have arm wrestled with him." From Lu Li's distress, plus 288. Lu Li was pissed off from hearing that. He was having suspicions if Lu Shu really did awaken during that arm wrestle with him, but Li Qi did mention that the awakening of strength-type metahumans did not have any signs, only that his strength was suddenly increased. And by Lu Li's logic, if Lu Shu had long awakened, there was no reason to hide it. But Lu Li's logic only applied to himself, as Lu Shu had experienced a rather different life. Lu Li tried to hold back his opinion, but in the end, so what, he's just a strength type. Chapter 68. Lu Li's reasons were simple. A strength-type metahuman was only Class F, and he could complete a cycle of training within 9 days. As soon as he reached Class E and acquired superhuman powers, what could Lu Shu, a strength type, do to him? Shifei also mentioned that Tier DS required half a month of training but did not speak about Tier E or F. That was to leave them with some pride and also to not make them lose hope. But everyone knew clearly that the difference between Tier B and F aptitude was like heaven and earth. Although he could not do anything about Lu Shu right now, it was a matter of time before he could completely overtake him. If nothing goes wrong, Lu Shu's aptitude was graded Tier F, and it would probably remain Tier F forever. As he thought about this, Lu Li was relieved. The incident just now was quite traumatic. While the rest were showing off to the other normal students, how did his showing off cause such a situation? Jiang Shui came into class and out of curiosity, asked, "You've awakened as a strength type?" "Yup," Lu Shu nodded. Only by mixing his lies and truths was he able to intimidate others, and letting others know about him awakening as a strength type did not pose any problem. Look at Li Qi. But needless to say, Lu Shu was indeed too careful. He had to witness that someone else was fine before he was willing to try the same thing. Otherwise, there would be no consideration. On the other hand, he knew that Li Xianyi had always been a swordsman and never faced any problems all these years, so what could happen to himself? He was just worried about that 0.1% chance. If that 0.1% really happened, what would happen to Lu Xiaoyu? Her training was already resolved and no one could bully her, but she was such a glutton, how could she feed herself? Jiang Shui had even more questions. What is it like to be a strength-type metahuman? So are you a Class F now, and how heavy are your punches? Obviously, Lu Shu could not answer truthfully about the feeling of awakening and decided to just repeat what Li Qi had said. As for how heavy his punches were, he said he did not know. Lu Shu also had questions for Jiang Shui. What did you feel when practicing the yin-yang kinship of the three? Have you completed one cycle? This was also in preparation for the night. Shi Fei had requested for everyone to update on their progress and he should at least find out how the training was like. Everyone else could train normally but for him, the energy was instantly suppressed by his celestial map. Jiang Shui thought for a moment and replied, spent about 2 hours getting the feel of it and the transfer of energy became smoother. The energy formed a flow which traveled around my body, following the root of the base chakra. Lu Shu was stunned, that's really complicated. Let me Google what the base chakra is, hold on. Jiang Shui laughed, the base chakra is the bottommost of the 7 chakras, which is also the energy focal point. It is the foundation for the whole body system and also where energy originates from. That cleared things up. Lu Shu was judging Jiang Shui. Previously, he had not seen that many Taoism books and so never came across this term. He thought that this deski his was quite knowledgeable. Was it because of recent research, or did he already knew all these long before? Lu Shu thought that the latter was more likely as Jiang Shui sounded very confident and spoke without a tinge of doubt. Also, it was his first day practicing, so how could he have possibly knew about the chakra? Not good, not good. Lu Shu felt a need be more careful. Could there be some secretive family line out there? But it did not seem to be that awesome as seeing that Li Xianyi managed to cultivate something in a magical energy-lacking environment, so why Jiang Shui had not? Talking about families, Lu Shu was not sure about what secretive or hidden households there were, but in the modern city society, there were definitely some big family names out there. If these people were interested in metahumans, they could easily recruit or provide their children with the required resources, and they would definitely be much stronger than those at the bottom of the Daoyuan class. And so, he should be more flexible with his judgment as there was always someone better than you and one day, that someone may just appear. Wait, Lu Shu suddenly asked, you said you took 2 hours to get the feel, what does that mean? Surprised, Jiang Shui glanced at Lu Shu, I couldn't feel the energy at the start, how long did you take? Shh. *T. Lu Shu was taken aback. Jiang Shui had Tier B aptitude and took 2 hours to find the feeling, and how long did Lu Shu take? He was able to feel the energy right from the start. So what could his aptitude be? Tier A? Lu Shu replied, I still haven't found the feeling. Come on, I'm sure you can do it. If there's anything you're unsure of you can ask me, Jiang Shui comforted. Lu Shu was feeling kind of bad. Jiang Shu had been very comforting these 2 days, and yet Lu Shu could not be honest with him. But he had no choice, what he could not reveal were meant to be kept a secret. He suddenly thought that this youngster had quite a pleasant personality but sadly, was not a girl. But no matter what, anything that concerned the lives of his family was out of bounds. Who would believe that a Class F aptitude could find the feeling right away? No one believing would actually be the best outcome, but if someone were to and dragged you to do a full body check, who could survive that? Would you trust someone else with your secret? Trusting yourself would be better. 17 years of being an orphan taught Lu Shu to live a bit more selfishly. Living in this world, Lu Shu had no other choice. At night, Shi Fei really requested everyone to report their progress in front of the others, and Lu Li confidently announced that he had already completed 1 cycle while Jiang Shui was more humble about it. This was just like announcing exam results during the normal school days, but the difference was that this took place every day, while exams only occurred once a month. This must be to incentivize everyone to work harder. It was Lu Shu's turn and he reported that he had not found the feeling yet. The other 2 Tier FS said the same thing and at that instant, felt a sense of empathy with Lu Shu and was considering to form a group within the 3 of them for some mutual support. As they were transfer students, they knew nothing about Lu Shu. Hoping for his help? Not going to happen. Maybe if they had asked around they would know that in sophomore class 3, Lu Shu was almost like a demon king kind of entity. This had nothing to do with his potential, but just being close to him would cause your heart to explode. Lu Shu's previous deski Yi Lingling shared this sentiment. Just being 2 m away from Lu Shu made the sky look brighter. Chapter 69. First period, English. Second period, Mathematics. Third period, Language. Fourth period, Geography. This was the timetable for sophomore class 3. During the afternoon classes, Lu Shu had realized something rather meaningful. There were 4 students from his original sophomore class 3, namely, himself, Lu Lingqi, Li Qingyu and Lu Li, who had entered the Daoyuan class although Li Qingyu had been expelled. The 11 new transfer students were also all part of the Daoyuan class. It was told to them when Daoyuan classes had first started that they would still need to participate in the cultural lessons, even as they rise up the academic levels, including the subjects' examinations as well. Even so, only Lu Shu and Jiang Shuyi were focusing on the lessons while the rest of them were keeping their eyes shut while they engaged in their training. The yin-yang kinship of the 3 was different from his celestial map as they could train even in the day. As such, these students were rushing to complete their training even in the day. According to Lu Li's personal experience, a day of training which Shifei mentioned was actually half a day as it did not include the timing they were in classes during the day. This meant that they could be considered to be rushing through their training. Lu Li thought that if he could complete 2 cycles within a day as compared to 1 cycle the other people of Tier B aptitude could complete, wouldn't it leave Shifei impressed? In actual fact, many of them were thinking the same thing as well. Lu Li had understood the practical benefits of training as he had already tasted the fruits of its labor firsthand. Furthermore, he was very troubled deep inside as he had received a complete beatdown from Lu Shu during this morning's arm wrestling. All he was thinking of was to complete the entire huge cycle as soon as possible in order to ascend out of the E class. The other students who had lower aptitudes were admiring the strength the Tier B students possessed, and wished to obtain what they had as early as possible. As Lu Shu was browsing through his income records, he saw that Lu Li was training with his eyes shut even though he had continuously been receiving distress points of +10, +7, +8 from him. Looking at the initial 6,000 plus distress points he had received from the early part of the day, it had just exceeded 7,000. Even as he trained, he did not forget to help out his classmate. What a great man. But, aren't you becoming a little too obsessive? Lu Shu was unsure of whether to cry or laugh at this situation. Lu Shu had to give it to the person who had invented this training method since it did not require the tranquil environment, as stated in the legends, in order to practice it. All they needed to do was to direct the magical energy into the root of their base chakra, simple and convenient. The last period was geography, which was taught by their form teacher, Shi Qingyan. Just as he entered the class, Shi Qingyan noticed this trend where all those Daoyuan class students were training with their eyes closed and that they did not even realize that a teacher had walked in. Shi Qingyan had remembered that luckily, Luocheng International School did not have the tradition where high school students would stand at attention and greet the teachers whenever they were to set foot into the class. Or else, with those Daoyuan class students sitting down as they continued their training without even moving at all, it would surely come as a blow to the teacher's pride and dignity. Lu Shu continued to observe Shi Qingyan's expression and realized that he did not intend to disrupt the Daoyuan class students' training. This was because he had already understood that in today's society, those who were in the Daoyuan class were considered to have a higher social status. Lu Shu had also read in the forums that Daoyuan classes had also been established in universities. Currently, there were some materialistic girls who would gladly throw themselves at the guys next to them if they had been enlisted in the Daoyuan class. The number of such girls was few, just like the number of boys who would go to the nightclub as gigolos in order to make a living. In the past, these girls would usually gather outside famous aviation schools as they felt that the boys there would normally be pilots after graduating, and be earning hundreds of thousands every year. Such logic was just shocking. And now, their sights were placed on the Daoyuan class students. But of course, they did not include the Tier E and Tier F students, as if they weren't considered to be part of the Daoyuan class. Being a guy himself, Lu Shu felt elated as he saw this thread on the forum. Can these girls please throw themselves at me? As he saw the last part concerning the Tier E and F students, Lu Shu let out a laugh. Why was there so much discrimination in this society? Are we, E and F tier students, not considered humans as well? Lu Shu suddenly felt rather curious and asked Jiang Shui, why aren't you training? Don't you have to rush through it? Daoyuan class is obviously segregating us into different places for first, second, and third class students, and the better you performed in your abilities would mean that you would be placed further in front. Perhaps in the future, when they distribute resources such as weapons, you would receive more of it. Jiang Shui shot him a look before replying in a soft voice, although the magical energy around here has been replenished, there is always a limit to how much magical energy a location would have. After depleting the location's energy, it requires time for it to be replenished. Thus, there are laws and rules you have to follow while training, and it's very important where you carry out your training. If someone with Tier F aptitude like you were to train in an energy-rich location while someone with a Tier B aptitude were to train in an energy-depleted location, perhaps the speed at which both of you are training at could be the same. Lu Shu thought about it for a while and agreed that it really was as such, and Jiang Shui wasn't spouting nonsense. Although the current energy in the area had been replenished, it wasn't similar to the air in the atmosphere where it could be immediately replenished the moment you have depleted it. It was more like a piece of cheese. The moment you finished it, it was gone for good. You would only be able to continue eating once the chef had served you yet another piece. As such, was there somewhere in this world where the magical energy in the area was bountiful, where it was higher than other places by a few folds, or even tens or hundreds of folds? It's not impossible. Lu Shu wouldn't naively believe that everyone in this world was dismissive towards the idea of training, as there would surely be some of them out there who were extremely interested in it. If metahumans were to become the world's most important resource one day, perhaps every single one of these predators would be out there fighting for these useful resources in frenzy, much like the current state of the business world. Thus, aptitude wasn't the only deciding factor in one's training speed. Furthermore, there's nothing in this world which was controlled by just a single factor, and in actual fact, even if one's aptitude was mediocre, one would still be able to achieve something through training. His deskie really did know quite a lot of stuff. Lu Shu curiously asked, how is this related to my question? Lu Shu's actual question was, why wasn't Jiang Shui rushing to complete his training during lesson time? Jiang Shui inched closer and whispered, there are 12 people training in this class currently. Even the class next door and all the other classes have students who are doing the same. All of them require this magical energy, and our school isn't a place which is blessed with the abundance of energy. How can it supply enough energy to all these people who are training now? Oh, Lu Shu clearly understood what he meant. If he had to compete with this many people for magical energy, he would have might as well save himself the effort. That's true. There were over 1,000 metahumans who were training in this one school, and the rate at which the energy was going to be depleted it would definitely be shocking. This was the reason why Jiang Shui did not bother to train in school at all, and it was also the reason why Shi Fei had said, don't bother trying it out at school, do it at home. Lu Shu had already viewed Jiang Shui in a different light, and this explanation from him further strengthened his impression of Jiang Shui. This dude must have definitely learned something from his family, as he had already made full sense of this reasoning while the others were still foolishly training and competing with each other for the magical energy. Chapter 70. From the looks of things, there were some people who labeled themselves as Daoyuan class students on social media as means to attract the attention of girls. Some were even liars who used such labels when they were actually not part of it. The trend was no longer to impersonate a kid from a rich family but to impersonate a Daoyuan class student. In reality, the majority of Daoyuan class were sophomores that under the strict controls of the black coats. This meant that most Daoyuan class students did not have the time to do such things, and students tend to be rather shy. If a pretty senior came over to flirt with boys in Daoyuan class, the boys would probably be too shy and run away. Not everyone was born to be an expert in love. There were even rumors that students of the Daoyuan class had become better and stronger in certain aspects after training. Some nightclubs even had hiring advertisements that said, high salary. strength-type male metahuman needed in public relations. There were more dishonest than decent such cases. Anyway, the current society was just like this. There were bound to be good and bad people, and in order to stay out of trouble, you had to be quick-witted. It was undeniable that metahumans quickly adapted to the society, and this was mankind's unique ability, to adapt. If humans could not adapt, mankind would not have been on top of the animal chain. Of course, there were people who questioned, would metahumans disrupt social stability? There weren't only good comments about metahumans on the forums. Someone revealed that in South America, there were already cases of metahumans committing crimes. And so were cases in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Australia, which were widely broadcasted by their local media. But locally, cases like these were really rare. It was a fact that the local public security had always made top 10 amongst all counties in the world, and it was not surprising that the appearance of metahumans did not change that. With regards to this, Lu Shu was grateful for the Black Coats' prowess and first-class methods in maintaining social stability. Having mentioned the Black Coats, what could their sector be called? It couldn't just be related sector, right? At this moment, Lu Shu noticed a girl 2 rows away listening to class when she suddenly started crying and even kept her head down so that the teacher could not see. Looking closely, she was just secretly reading a romance novel. Wow! Lu Shu had a sudden flashback. He had read some novels before and some plots were really disgusting. Maybe he could use writing novels as a way to earn distress points? However, Lu Shu was troubled. Even though his grades were always good and even topped the class in the previous exam, his essays were consistently poor and never excelled in that area. Damn it! Lu Shu felt like he had just discovered a mountain of treasure but just could not retrieve it. How frustrating. He should have read more novels. Most writers had read large numbers of books. Perhaps the imagination part relied on talent, but the writing required a long time to develop. What was meant by writing? Was it the use of bombastic and pretty terms? No. Writing was the ability to pen down the world, characters, and the storyline inside your mind. This looked simple, but it was actually not. Even though Lu Shu had read a few novels these 10 years, others were busy living their lives while he was busy trying to make ends meet, so where to find the energy to read that much? A student who also worked odd jobs until 2 a.m., where could he find that much leisure time to read novels? What he read the most were news. The habit to read the news was because he wanted to be updated as sooner or later he had to go into the society and find a job to feed his family. At that point in time, he had to do whatever he could with his fragile body so as to fight for a living for him and Lu Xiaoyu. Instead of reading a novel, he would rather have some sleep. Lu Shu did not have options in life since he lacked the basic material foundation. The rule of this world was that everything was controlled by destiny and everything was already decided. His living standards already decided that even if Lu Shu were to write a novel, no one might even read it. Or if written too poorly, no one would. Things like distress points relied on the people, and if no one read, there would not be any distress points. But Lu Shu's life wasn't that bad. He still had his adorable classmates. This afternoon, Lu Shu did not bring his stinky tofu to the canteen but instead, he took a public bus to a second-hand phone market that was 5 kilometers away. He wanted to buy a new SIM card to use for the Golden Foundation Forum. The second-hand phone market was located in the heart of Luocheng City, which used to be bustling with activity, but had later on been reduced to a low-class business district. A few years ago there were still people carrying a bag and asking around, anyone wants movies, imported ones? There are all sorts, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, and Korean. But such people were no longer seen and a new business took its place, second-hand phones, selling lost identification cards, phone SIM cards, etc. This place had no regulations or control and it was a mess. But Lu Shu liked this kind of messy environment. Wearing his hoodie and walking on the streets, He casually found a portable stall and managed to buy a SIM card with just $70. The phone he was using was also a second-hand one, and now, his SIM card was also bought using someone else's identification. With the tens of thousands of users on the Golden Foundation forum, it was almost impossible to find out his real identification. On the way back in the bus, Lu Shu was scrolling through the forums and came upon a new post. The original poster seemed familiar. It was the one selling chives. The post said, not only were the chives sold out, even his house was sold at a high price. Lu Shu was stunned and continued reading. Apparently, after the buyer bought the chives, he was not satisfied and decided to offer a price that was 30% higher than the market rate to buy the house that the seller lived in, claiming that he needed to grow his own chives to achieve the effects. Lu Shu looked at the post in disbelief. Why were some people so weird, buying a house to grow chives to eat? Did this guy not care about his money? That's not right. Lu Shu had suddenly thought of another possibility. If the idea that different places in the world had different feng shui was right, then could it be that the house that those special chives grew in was richer in magical energy? Thinking about it, Lu Shu understood what happened. The buyer had bought this place to carry out his training. Dao Yuan class had resumed at night, and Shi Fei started off with checking everyone's progress. Lu Li's hopes to complete 2 cycles were destroyed as those who tried practicing in the day realized that the speed of training was much faster at home. At this moment, Shi Fei asked Jiang Shuyi for his progress, and he calmly replied, "Progress, 2 cycles completed." Everyone was taken aback. Jiang Shuyi did not only have Tier B aptitude but could also complete 2 cycles so quickly. But everyone also noticed that Shi Fei was not surprised.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, then we just put 'em on the shelf. Try to look to the heavens.